This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you. Let's stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. A nice way to start a public meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Let me remind people viewing from home to turn off your mics and your videos, please. Let me first of all thank the South Burlington High School debate team for their work on this. Brooks, why don't you wave to the crowd? That's Brooks Balkin. We have Jared Williams. And to my immediate left, we have Ava White. And sitting there in the front row is McKenna Cannon. And we also want to thank Jessie Baker for her work as our evening's AV technician, plus many other things too numerous to mention. But most of all, thanks to the 4 candidates for their willingness to serve as city councilors in this very important job. For the 3-year seat, we have Linda Bailey as the challenger, and Tim Barrett, who we see on the screen, is the incumbent. For the 2-year seat, we have Megan Emery, the incumbent, and Chris Trombly, the challenger. My name is Vince Bolduc. I'm moderating this tonight. I've been a resident of South Burlington for 45 years, recently retired, and Monica Ospey is there. She's helped us with this also, as well as doing the school board one a little more than an hour ago. Here's the agenda for tonight. We're planning on exactly 2 hours, ending at 9:30. We're going to start with 2 minutes for each candidate to self-introduce themselves, and then 3 minutes for each of them, to explain why they wish to serve. The sequence and order of their presentations and responses have been predetermined, and they have them. We've done it so that the first person alternates, the second person, middle people alternate as well. And we've also done it so that the candidates are paired with their opponents. So they kind of sitting next to each other, but also I'll call on them in that paired way, because that's the way, of course, that voters will see them on the ballot. We will start with 4 specific questions that the students and I came up with, and which we shared with the candidates last weekend, so they've had time to think about them and prepare an answer. Those will be 3 minutes each. Then in the last 30 or so minutes, the students will select, the 2 students here, Jared and Brooks, will select some of your questions, and the candidates will each give a 2-minute response to those. Those questions will come in 2 forms. From the audience that's here, they will probably around 8:30 pass out some 3x5 cards, and you can write your questions on that, and then Brooks will pick them up and discuss with Jared the questions that he is seeing from the chat room for the people who are viewing this online, and they'll put their heads together and try to avoid redundancies. And we will ask you, and this is where they'll be looking for this, only ask questions that all candidates can answer. So we've decided not to allow questions that were only directed to one candidate. So if you want to ask a question, just make it generic so all candidates can see it. Ava White will be the strict timekeeper. She has here something that says 30, meaning 30 seconds left. And then when that's expired, she'll have another red sign that you'll be able to see. Okay, applause and other forms of public display are discouraged. This is not a formal debate, although it's frequently referred to as a debate, but real debates are quite formal affairs, and there are judges and points scored, and emphasis is placed on rhetoric. This isn't like that. This is more like what we call the presidential debates, and each candidate will answer the same questions in an order. So we're ready to start. In alphabetical order, each candidate will take 2 minutes to introduce him or herself with a brief bio sketch. And they will be in this order: Linda Bailey, then Tim Barrett, they're paired together, and then Megan Emery and Chris Trombly. So Linda, would you start us off?
Absolutely. Thank you all for coming tonight.
Is your microphone on, Linda?
The little light is on.
Okay, good. Can you hear her okay? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you all for coming tonight, both in person and online. Just in case you haven't heard, my name's Linda Bailey, and I'm running for the 3-year seat on City Council. This section of my time is for telling you a little bit about myself. Well, I've lived in South Burlington for about 9 years, in Chittenden County for 20, and I was raised in Vermont in the little town of Johnson, about an hour's drive east on Route 15. Then I raised my kids in Jeffersonville. And as far as roots, my family's lived in Vermont for over 250 years. This is my first time running for a political office, and it is amazing. I'm meeting wonderful people out in the community, as well as the people here on the city staff are incredibly helpful. At this point, there's only one gray cloud. There's a PAC, a Political Action Committee, named Voices of the Environment, that's been posting, at best, misrepresentations of what I and Chris Trombly are running for. It is so in contrast to what I'm used to and what I see in the rest of South Burlington that I can just go, wow. But then it occurred to me, they wouldn't be working so hard to keep Chris and I out of the running if they didn't think we had a really good chance of winning. So I think it's a positive overall. Anyway, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about me. Almost all of my immediate family lives either here in South Burlington or in Vermont, and it makes me very aware of the future. I have a whole batch of grandchildren. I think our city is a beautiful place to live, from the smiles on the faces around us to the beautiful parks we have. Thanks for your attention, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be talking to you later this evening.
Thank you, Linda. Tim Barrett, next.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Tim Barrett, if you didn't know, and maybe you've seen my signs in various places, but I am also running for City Council, and Linda is challenging me. If you didn't know, I was born in Washington, D.C., lived in Maryland for 10 years. Then my mother moved us to Brattleboro for a few years. Then we moved to Amherst, Mass. Then we moved to Martha's Vineyard, where she bought a rooming house, and she kept the rooming house and did all the work and filled it up during the summer times in order to pay the mortgage in the winter time. I graduated from the high school on Martha's Vineyard and went to the University of Rhode Island. I got a bachelor's in electrical engineering. I interviewed with IBM in January, came up, it was 20 below when I visited the plant that time, and I've been there pretty much ever since through the transition to Global Foundries. I did take a 2.25 year break after about 5 years to join the Peace Corps, and I was an education person at a private school in Liberia, West Africa. I had the opportunity to be fully immersed in a completely different culture, a different kind of language, a different kind of history, and I really treasure that experience. And one little piece of information that you don't know about me, that because I did live on Martha's Vineyard in 1974, I did wander onto the set of the filming of Jaws as an unpaid extra, and I actually was filmed in the mass racing scene from the water to the beach, but they cut that scene so you can't really see me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Megan, you're next. Sure, others should feel free to do the same.
You can identify me.
Sure, and yeah, then we'll just put them back on when we're done speaking. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, and thank you very much. This is, like I said to the students here, this is my favorite forum during campaign season. I am a professor at UVM, and so I love working with young people, and they are my focus. So my name is Megan Emery. I've lived in South Burlington for 20 years. My husband and I moved here with 2 little boys. Talking about family roots, the Emerys did move through Vermont as well as upper state New York. So I do encounter Emerys. We moved out my branch out to the Midwest. I grew up in Chicago, in the Chicago area, where I did my undergraduate studies. Then I moved on to graduate work, which took me to Ohio. In the intermediate, I studied and taught in France. I taught English. I am a foreign language teacher, as well as a professor of French literature and philosophy and culture. And so U of M brought us here. And when we arrived from Ohio, we arrived to a very expensive place. We had one choice, which was a house in the Chamberlain neighborhood. And this was looking throughout the entire county. My husband came over a weekend. And fortunately, a colleague put us onto it. We bought it for $172,500. So I think that's something to keep in mind. I became active in the community through the PTO, established after-school foreign language programs with Monica Osby and another parent. Did that, and then got very involved with the city and ran for city council in 2008 for the first time, and have served now for 6 terms, total of 12 years, and the same values then as now, which is affordability, quality of life, conservation of our open spaces, economic, fiscal, and environmental sustainability. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Chris Trombly, you're last.
Good evening. Vince, thank you for moderating. Thank you to the South Burlington High School team for facilitating this transaction. Hello, Megan, Linda, and Tim online. It's good to see everybody. Chris Trombly, lifelong Vermonter, born in my hometown is Lincoln, Vermont. Met my wonderful wife, who's been very supportive during this campaign. In college, we have 2 young kids, students at Chamberlain. We value the importance of our quality schools. Being a role model for my kids is important. While they couldn't be here tonight, it's almost bedtime at this time of night. Hopefully we can watch that on YouTube later. And we came to South Burlington when our jobs moved out of town. Our commute had jumped from 10 minutes to 45 minutes. So that meant less time with your family, and it's a higher carbon footprint. We were fortunate enough to find a home here in South Burlington. We love it. We enjoy going to hockey games anyways, and it's nice to grab a pint of fries at Al's beforehand. Hobbies include listening, attending baseball, hockey games. I'm a novice stamp collector. Play video games with my kids, although they beat me more often now than they used to. Currently the chair of the Affordable Housing Committee, vice chair of the Board of Civil Authority, and professionally I work at People's United Bank as a vice president of loan operations, assisting homeowners having financial difficulty. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're continuing with the same line of questioning about who they are and what they're interested in. So we'll start this question with Trombly, and then Emery, and then Barrett and Bailey. So here's the question. Would you explain to us, and you have 3 minutes for this, explain to us why you wish to serve as a member of the City Council? What do you wish to accomplish? Your top concerns for the city and so forth. So that's up to you. So let's start with you, Chris Trombly.
Thank you. I ran for City Council because I wanted to give a voice to those that may not have had a represented voice currently. Affordable housing has been my passion recently, but my approach to politics and city governance is common sense priorities. I'm not coming at this with an agenda that I want to see. I think it's important that we listen to diverse perspectives, hear those voices out, but we still have important priorities such as vigorous implementation of our new environmental regulations. Helping residents and folks, shorten their drive from their city and get to their job, give them a place to live, that meets their needs. I see climate change, affordability, and maintaining our high quality city services as top concerns in the coming years. within the capacity of the taxpayers. So that's kind of the foundation for why I'm running, and look forward to tonight's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Megan Emery now.
Yeah. Well, like I told you, young people are really at the center of my life. In addition to our boys who are now grown, they're 21 and 22. We have a 5th grader at Chamberlain School, and I work with 18 to 22-year-olds, and sometimes a little older than that every day. And I think very much about the future. This land that we live on, we are in fact borrowing from the future generations, and that is a saying that goes back to ancient traditions on many continents, and I truly believe in that. We've done so much, this current council, in order to serve those future generations. We have worked to make city services efficient. We have worked to create this beautiful city center and this building that we're sitting in. We have worked to conserve land like the Eau Claire and the Leduc farms, which now Bread and Butter Farm is using to farm, which that local farming will become more and more important as food resources become more and more expensive or more difficult through climate change and the failure of crops. We have also seen through the South Burlington food shelf, we have a partnership with Common Roots. We passed Penny for Paths for our walking and biking trails. I myself wrote the resolution for the Climate Action Task Force, knowing that it was urgent that we act. This task force is currently working, consulting with the Vermont Climate Action Plan in order to develop a city-specific plan. We have seen meteoric growth in our businesses in high tech, as well as startup in electric aviation. This is our future, and this is what we are investing in by having more than 500 homes in the pipeline currently. We also have built all these years that I have served, and that is important for us as we go forward to consider how growth feeds our economic growth, but also places a strain on our city services. So I am growing for that specific reason, again, for sustainability into the future. I am someone who is not here for just one reason, but I look to see the forest for the trees. And our city services, which are an amazing team of professionals, they are incredibly stretched thin. So this is a lean team, and I said we work on efficiencies all the time, but we are struggling to fund the needs of roads, police, fire, emergency services, as well as our schools. Our past director of planning and zoning and the fire chief spoke about a tipping point that we were approaching, and we are on the precipice of that tipping point. So we need to be very careful about how we grow, when we grow. We're going to grow. So it is all about incremental growth so that our future generations are well served by our actions today. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Megan. Now it's Tim Barrett and then Linda Bailey.
Gotta turn on my camera. Thank you, Vince. You know, I love to serve and I love to volunteer, and I think that's quite evident in my experience with the city of South Burlington. I served on the library board of trustees for 6 years, and then I transferred over to the development review board, where I served for 4.5 years, and in the last year I served as chair, which is an amazing experience. It really opens your eyes to the amazing work that the planning and zoning department does at the city to create the interface between the applications between the applicant and the board. And that was a very satisfying experience, because although there are some projects you really can't help nuance, there are many that you can. And I love driving around the city and seeing the projects that myself and other board members had the ability to make small changes that ended up with aesthetically pleasing buildings, you know, in the city. And after that, I was elected to city council, where I've served for 6 years, and I'm seeking another term. Volunteerism runs in my family. Like I said, I was a Peace Corps volunteer. That was a 2.25 year experience. And perhaps you know my wife, Katie O'Brien. She's been doing the murals on the underpasses and all the utility boxes with the people that she works with. And if you've ever been to the food shelf, you know, I helped paint the side of that building as well, and some other murals. So what I think is important for the city is to we have to keep an eye on finances and keep an eye on taxes. I mean, every budget that I've had a chance to vote on, I've tried to try and keep the tax increase to 3% or less. Some years that's been successful, some years it hasn't been successful. So it's hard to keep a control on taxes, but we have to do it. But there are expenses that are growing within the city. Climate change is the #2 thing we have to worry about over the next few years and further out. And we'll probably be talking about that later on, so I don't want to dwell on that too much. You know, we have a possibility of building a rec center in South Burlington. We just built and completed and occupied that building that you guys are in right now. At least you didn't get hurt by the solar panel flying off, I hear, which is good. And you know, the TIF district encompasses the U Mall, and there is a lot of potential for redevelopment in that area. And if you just take a look at what's happened in Burlington with their mall, you know that at this point it's a complete disaster, and that's something that I don't want to have repeated in South Burlington. And we have a lot of potential there for mixed-use housing, but we need to look at that closer and when that time comes. There is a plan to put a Williston streetscape on and include a bike path on the southern side of Williston and Williston Road to be able to connect it and make it safer for both, you know, pedestrians and bikers. That's something that has to be done, as well as the plan to improve all the intersections along Williston Road. And if you didn't know, there's a bucket of money and a project that's planned to make adaptive all the signals on Dorset Street between Trader Joe's and Williston Road, so that those signals understand which cars are waiting and which aren't. Because if you've been stuck waiting to turn left into U Mall or turn into Trader Joe's or waiting in the other lanes, you wait forever even though the lane is empty, which is very frustrating to me as a driver. We also do electrical inspections.
Tim,
of multi. Oh,
Tim, Ava's been holding this up. I don't know if
you know,
you can see it or not.
you got to hold it to the camera, not to the.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're
So,
there.
I see it now. Thank you. So I'd like to
Finish your
include
thought.
electrical inspections on single-family homes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, no, yeah, thank you, Tim. Linda Bailey.
Hello again. This part of my time is to tell you about why I decided to run for City Council, which is a very new venture for me. I feel that our city needs new, fresh eyes and a fresh voice. I decided that if I wanted change in our city, I needed to step up for it. I'm running to support our city as a place for all of us across the economic and cultural spectrum to thrive. I want to protect the environment while recognizing the needs for housing for the middle class, as well as building entry-level and affordable homes. Unfortunately, I feel that the new land development regulations were not thoroughly vetted for their impact on our city. I'd like to see some things happen, like having our Economic Development Committee take a crack at seeing what the long-term results of them are. South Burlington stands at a crossroads. The choices we make now will affect the character of our city for decades to come. It will shape the impact that we have on our region and our state. And I want to make sure that it's a positive impact. I want to make sure that no part of our city is left out of the prosperity that's being brought by the good, clean tech companies that are moving to and growing in our area. South Burlington deserves a community where everyone has a voice, a balanced community governed equitably for everyone, where people are welcomed and can make a home, thrive, and participate fully in the decisions that matter most in our community. I'll not be owing allegiance to any PACs or anyone other than the residents of South Burlington. I want to hear from you tonight, tomorrow, and if I'm lucky, for the next 3 years. I'll make sure that everyone has a way to reach me and to tell me of your hopes, your dreams, and the things that you see our city needing. Join me on this wonderful adventure.
Good. Thank you very much, Linda. Now we turn to the 4 prepared questions that the members of the debate team selected as being the most important. These are 3 minutes each. Here's number 1. And the sequence of this will be Linda Bailey, and then Tim Barrett, Emery, and Trombly. Here's the question. The biggest problem of our generation is climate change. Even our small city has a climate action plan committee that is working on this problem. What do you think our city should or could do to address this problem?
One of the first things I think we need to do is look at what is a city? What does a city need? First, a city has a lot of people in it, needs water to drink, food to eat. For that, I'd like to see us opening up more community garden spaces so people can learn now and be ready in the future to help supply their own food table needs. A city also needs safe places to live, housing. That's a big part of what a city is. I think that we need to continue to upgrade the city's buildings and infrastructure. We need to be a place where residents can find the info to help them upgrade and improve their homes. I'd like to see the city be a clearinghouse, have something set up to help people find the right information. One of the things we can do to help our environment is to make sure that we're planting native plants and keeping out the invasive plants in our area. I like that we're encouraging clean tech here. That gives us a way to help affect everything in the world as well as just in our area. Remember, we aren't in a bubble. Our actions work on other people's actions work on us. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Tim Barrett is next.
Yeah, this is a great question, Vince. Thank you very much. You know, we have a climate action task force that's going to produce an action plan for us, and I can't wait to see what's on that. But in terms of climate change, you know, you're asking about what can the city do, but sometimes you need to ask, what can you do? What can a single person do or a family to address, you know, and try and help? And I mean, you can do simple things like you can get an e-bike. I have an e-bike. You can get a pluggable hybrid car or an electric car. I have a pluggable hybrid. I charge it at my house. I charge it at the city hall where there's a charging station in order to reduce the amount of carbon, you know, dioxide that I create. In the summertime, I commute to Global Foundries on my e-bike, cutting through Butler Farms over the Lubrizzi Bridge, you know, to get to work. And it's a great ride. It takes like 10 minutes more than driving, and it's beautiful on beautiful days. There is a lot of other stuff that can be done that we have to look at. You know, we could look at our regulations and ask the same kind of questions that Burlington's been asking. Should we decrease our dependence on natural gas? Should we increase the or create a regulation that says, you know, you can't have natural gas in new construction. You can only use electricity and heat pumps and split systems. We should look at the efficiency of these buildings. Should they be net zero or close to net zero if possible? And as I've said before in other meetings, you know, every kilowatt that strikes the ground that's not caught by a solar panel where it could be done is a total waste of energy that you could use. So if you're going to have a net zero house and you're going to have heat pumps, you might as well have some solar to at least capture 50 to 70% of the energy that's needed to run that. And that's a great way to save energy and save money. You know, Green Mountain Power is about 60% hydroelectric and 40% nuclear. It's one of the cleanest utilities in the whole country. And so we have a huge opportunity here to try and decrease our dependence on CO2. How much time do I have left? Because I can't see. 30 seconds.
Yeah. Okay.
So, you know, with the things that I do with my house, the solar panels in my house, I like to think that I'm the low carbon counselor, but I don't know. So one of the things we have to do is we have to start measuring. When the action committee task force comes back, they're probably going to say, we need to start measuring the city. How much natural gas, how much gasoline, how much diesel do we use? How much solar energy do we create? Can we create more solar energy? Can we put solar panels at the wastewater treatment plant like Lubrizzi has suggested, you know, to alleviate some of the demand on the utility? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Now, Megan Emery goes next.
Yeah, thank you. The current council has taken two very important steps. We created a climate action task force, and we have passed these new land use regulations, which better address our housing goals and our climate action goals. The regulations provide for more efficient use of the land by requiring smaller lots and house sizes as well as duplexes and multiplexes along our city infrastructure, roads, sewer, water lines. They better protect our wetlands and forests with adequate buffers, and wetlands and forests are going to be critical for flood mitigation as increasingly violent rainstorms come our way. Nothing replaces a natural wetland, and in fact, we restored the wetland in our city center just south of here. This used to be a floodplain. That's what could come if we overdevelop the land near our wetlands, and the southeast quadrant is where our wetlands lie, many of them. The regulations also better protect our ecosystems. We belong to a food chain, and if we break that chain, our predators, and they're our biggest predators, although they're tiny, that is viruses and bacteria, we will be more susceptible to sickness and to death, just as we learned during these past 2.5 years. And we will also be seeing new rules for infill development. And that infill development will include open space. So we will not have an overbuilt city like the city of Chicago that I love so much, where we have heat islands and where people suffer and die from heat exposure. We will have open space, including in our most densely inhabited sections of the city, where people can live and thrive, perhaps, I hope, grow food as food becomes increasingly scarce. It will also be walkable and bikeable, as it is already here in City Center, and it's becoming increasingly so thanks to Penny for Paths. I believe that the city needs to invest in our natural infrastructure, and something that the city did do, the city council during interim zoning, is we had an economics report on what our natural infrastructure saves us. It's $240 million over 20 years. Those are intangible benefits, but they are critical benefits. Flood mitigation will bankrupt us if we do not heed the warnings of California with the fires. Looking forward, we are going to, of course, invest in weatherization and electrification of utilities. Here are some of my ideas. I think that we need to have a study of the ecosystems in our habitat blocks, continue to restore our wetlands. We need to take actions promoting and protecting biodiversity through a tree ordinance. In the medium term, we will pass these new LDRs for infill and commercial to include green space, just as I expressed. We will clean our impaired waterways. We will incentivize businesses to put solar panels, and on and on and on. We need to do a lot, and many more than 3 minutes worth. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Chris Trombly, please.
Things we do to climate change need to be doable and place the highest priority on transportation, which is the largest generator of greenhouse gases. Let me start over. Things we can do to combat climate change need to be doable and place the highest priority on transportation, the largest generator of greenhouse gases. Give priority to recreation paths that engage people to use their paths to get to work, but that's throughout the city. We've over invested in one area of the city at the expense of the rest of the city. Installing more charging stations, increased user friendliness of our bus system. Much of our area isn't served by bus, and it is restrictive. Make sure that our land development regulations allow for housing and commercial development, and the environmental protections that we passed are an important first step. So we have shared values of those floodplains and the importance and that economic value on those. But there's other smaller things that we can do. Implement incentives for city and UVM employees to carpool, and I'm sure there's others. We look forward to the results of the Climate Action Task Force, but most importantly, the Vermont State Climate Council, and looking forward to their final draft and recommendations. And how do we reconcile state goals with our own action plan? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The second common question for everyone that they've seen before is this. Each of you has said that South Burlington has a housing shortage and that there is a need to address the problem, especially for housing that is affordable. How do you think that your approach to this problem is different from that of your opponent? What do you think should be done? And the order in this with this question starts with Megan Emery and then goes to Chris Trombly.
Yeah, thank you. Important question. affordable workforce housing is necessary for economic prosperity. There's no doubt about it. And developers tell us, for-profit developers tell us that this type of housing is too expensive to build. So in 2014, while I was on the council, we established an affordable housing committee. We also have a housing trust fund. We want to put $1 million into that housing trust fund. And that is what we need to do in order to have truly affordable housing, to partner with nonprofits like Habitat for Humanity or CHT or Cathedral Square, just like we did here on Market Street. We expanded inclusionary zoning, but I am concerned that this is something that Chris and I disagree on. We only require 1 in 10 homes to be affordable with that inclusionary zoning when they are owner occupied. 2 homes if there are rental properties. That is too few. They have access to these state and federal grants just as what we have access to in providing more funds for our housing trust fund. We can do much better than 1 in 10, and home ownership is necessary. People who are entering into our community and wish to increase their equity in their homes, they need to be able to buy a home, and that will help them in the long run, them and their future offspring. Here in City Center, we created 200 perpetually affordable residences, thanks to our housing trust fund. Also, another thing where we differ is that the conservation PUD out in our city, particularly in our southeast quadrant, but not only, but that's what we've been discussing so far, there is a 70-30 split. And that means that on that 30% of a parcel that is full of natural resources, thus giving it the conservation PUD requirement, that density from that full parcel can be put on that 30%. My opponent wishes to take away that protection from wetlands and flooding for all those homes. Okay.
Point of order. We've
Statement I'd like Megan to.
Okay, we have an agreement about how to handle when there are factual disagreements, and it's to call for a point of order exactly as Chris Trombly just did. He can make his case, and then the time goes back to Megan. This is without detracting from Megan's time.
Thank you.
Okay.
And perhaps he's changed his mind because we did talk about this on the phone, and that is what he did share with me.
Okay.
And I also think that the truly affordable homes for the people who are new Americans, who are people who are coming from backgrounds where traditionally federal laws and zoning laws excluded them from gaining equity. And this is a generational problem, that we give them the opportunity to enter into our housing market. Even people like my family coming from Ohio, getting into this housing market today. We could never find a $172,000 home today in our city. That is what these grants will help us do. And I want us to use those $1 million in order to partner with Habitat for Humanity and build not just 1 home, but hundreds of affordable homes for all the people that serve us every day.
Megan, thank you. Chris Trombly, your turn.
Megan is right. We do. This is an area that we differ on. And, you know, one of those first things is that my opponent and I have fundamental differences on expanding homeownership opportunities and how to close the wealth gap from the bottom up. Reliance on one-time funds, you know, let's just talk about how much $1 million really is. In order to build a affordable home, capital A affordable home for households under 80%, we're talking about 4 households. You know, I think we need to measure our expectations, what $1 million can deliver for us. That will be a great down payment on a host of housing solutions and make those a reality, but that is not the solution. Those one-time funds need to be backed up with long-term holistic solutions. Very proud of inclusionary zoning, 1 out of 10. So as the city grows, I think it's reasonable that we set aside housing that's affordable for generations to come, and that we continue to serve an underserved population in all areas of our city. Downzoning the wealthiest section of our city and placing that housing next to the interstate is not a good solution. these land regulations missed an opportunity, and this is not a reflection of our planning commission, this is a reflection of the policymakers, the city council, where we reduced a number of units that could have been realized by almost 350 units. And we moved those out of the area. Those are a missed opportunity where we could have seen missing middle household building types, and we're not. And we could have done that without sacrificing a single natural resource that was identified in Article 12. So when Councilor Emery says we're going to build missing middle housing, how is she going to do that without market rate builders actually building homes? We can't rely on just nonprofits to make up that gap. When the response is the answer to the problem is partnering with Habitat, Champlain, Cathedral Square, and ARPA funds. That's a good first step, but it's a very limited step. We need to bring in every developer with the capacity to build in needs into the fold to address this problem, because as wonderful those nonprofits are, they only deliver a small fraction. So when we talk to college graduates about, I want to be able to move out of my parents' house and I want to start my own life, what is the solution if they don't qualify for subsidized housing, but the building that we do build as a result of these land development regulations aren't providing a housing type that they want. They want that compact housing type where they can bike to services, they can access shops, go to school. Ms. Emery's solutions are not holistic and not meet their needs.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Next goes Linda Bailey, and then Tim Barrett will finish this question.
Hello again. I agree with Chris that $1 million sounds lovely, like it would do a great deal. It really won't. We need to be looking at the LDRs. I feel that they're too restrictive. They need some tweaking carefully. One of the things I do agree is we need to protect our environment. Unfortunately, South Burlington is not the only place with an environment. Every home that we don't build here is getting built somewhere else, somewhere out, in a place that it further fractures that environment, those forest tracts, those fields. South Burlington hasn't been rural in a long time. We just need to stop acting like we are. I absolutely agree that we need green spaces. I don't want to fill in any of our swampy areas or anything like that. But we need to look at increasing the housing levels throughout the city. I've talked with the DPW recently, and they tell me that our water and sewage capacities are in good shape. We could handle more housing here. We need to be open to all styles of houses, whether they're 2 floors, 3 floors, 4-floor building that can hold a great many apartments or condominiums. There's also a study that the Planning Commission received about 2 years ago in March of 2020 that looked at the value that new homes bring in revenue versus what it takes to take care of them, keeping their roads plowed and paved and all of those sort of things. And it turns out, probably in my guess, partly because our former residents here paid to put out the water and sewer infrastructure throughout the city, if there's a net gain. More houses actually bring more income. So housing is not just a one-off.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda. Tim Barrett, please.
Thank you. The housing shortage is an economic, simple supply and demand problem. The developers know this. The vacancy rate in general in Chittenden County is about 0.8%. A healthy vacancy rate should be about 5% because that encourages competition among the owners of apartment buildings to lower their rents. It's a very simple concept. So the problem is that we don't have enough units of whatever it is to make that competition actually happen. I'm proud of the work that the City Council did when I was on it in 2017, when we pushed through the TIF district, especially with City Center, for Market Street and Garden Street and why. I want you to take a look at Market Street today and you'll see Allard Square and the Garden Street apartments, and there's another building up and there's another building planned. It's all housing. The ones that are operated by nonprofits are affordable. The other ones will be market rate with some affordability in it, depending upon whatever the number of units and the inclusionary rule is there. And that's just part of Market Street and Garden Street. More buildings will come over time. And I want to stress to people that it's not like there's nothing coming in South Burlington to be built. I mean, the reason we went into IZ is because people saw what happened at O'Brien Hillside Farm, or they were notified that there was a development called Dorset Meadows that was about to take place, right? But there is a ton of housing in the pipeline in South Burlington right now. Cider Mill 2, which is going to be called Edgewood, has 139 units, and they're building the road infrastructure, sewer, and water right now. The Rye property north of Oak Creek still has 3 fourplexes to put in. It's another 12 units, and since those will be fourplexes, they'll probably be more affordable than other, and they have some more single-family homes to do. You can see the bulldozers off of Spear Street at the Spear Meadows development, which finally got permitted after starting in 2009 by Eric Farrell. That's 49 units. You have O'Brien Hillside Farm, where we just agreed to sponsor the 2 Summit buildings for a 94 total of affordable units. And then that's the rest of O'Brien Hillside Farm, whereas there's 115 units, and that's not even talking about the other side of the hill, where they eventually will expand with probably more housing. Then you have the Long property that's just between South Point and South Village. That's probably going to be another 40 units. And then Jeff Nick gets a residential zoning change at the Hill Farm, which could be a maximum of 500 units. So I don't want anybody to tell me that South Burlington isn't doing something to create more housing in Chittenden County. I grant you, a lot of it will be too expensive, but there's also an argument that if you create more housing, you will vacate some of the more affordable housing as people move up the income chain, and then you will have those people in those. The biggest loss here was the 200 homes at the airport that were demolished. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. We now go to the third prepared question. Here it is. The city has just passed new land development regulations. What parts of these new regulations do you agree with most strongly or disagree with most strongly? The order here starts with Chris Trombly and then Megan Emery. Chris?
Stepping back a little bit, we should stop and recognize.
Can't hear him.
Okay. Hi, good evening. We should stop and recognize the incremental progress that has been made over the years. Those 200 affordable home units downtown, that's progress. Inclusionary zoning, which was just expanded, is incremental progress. So it's not to say that the city's not doing anything, but it's important to recognize, as Tim highlighted, that this pipeline of housing is not meeting our housing needs. We're looking at inequities in our population of median household income for different types of households and who can afford them. So, Megan's asked me this before. When I say, what kind of city are we building and for who? We're missing a big chunk. Some of the folks that moved into the city in 2018 just got in before the pandemic. They had a hard enough time finding a home. And then, pandemic hits, prices shoot up. Our grand list is 27% higher. This isn't just a supply issue, but we can control the zoning of what types of housing that we build. There was some missed opportunities where we dragged out IZ for 3 years. That was mismanagement. We got the environmental piece right, but we really rushed through the PUDs right. And I just don't want to see that kind of management happen to other priorities, such as the U-Mall development. When we want to think about where could we put a rec center, what kind of housing could we put there, how could that be a hub for our entire city? That's not something where we want to replicate the failures of City Place, where they're still trying to put up all that housing. We need an agile partner in the city, and you know, it's hard not to reflect back on the land development regulations, celebrate the environmental piece, but real missed opportunity on the housing part. We're still not building housing for the average person.
Thank you. Now it's time for Megan Emery.
This is clearly the toughest nut that we have to crack. Any area that is desirable, you're going to have a hard time finding affordable housing. I told you I came from the Chicago area. Where in Chicago can you find affordable housing? It's public housing because of gentrification. That's what happened to the Chamberlain neighborhood. The house I bought for $172,000 is now worth nearly double that, and I could probably sell it for more. That's the issue. We're growing and we're desirable. So what we need to do is we need to first tend to the people who cannot even enter this market. And that is where these funds, the state and federal grants, come to play. Inclusionary zoning, as I learned today, is funded by those same grants. It's not a one-time deal. And our council chair spoke with Habitat for Humanity about the $1 million. And in fact, it could start a cycle where we make it possible for them to purchase the land and to build homes. They sell those homes in order to build more homes because the money that they make through those sales, they can put into different projects. So it is a cycle that could be ongoing long term. With regard to the missing middle, I've been going door to door for the last 2.5 weeks. I've been talking to people making well over the median salary for the county, so they will not be able to live in the perpetually affordable homes. Perhaps in some future iteration, but at the current time, no. They are living in a townhouse, may have 2 to 3 kids, they're ready to upsize. I also talked to people whose children had moved out, they were retired, they're ready to downsize. This is what our regulations are bringing to us. By creating these smaller lots, smaller homes, and I don't know how you can build more than what is already prepared for in this document, which is virtually the same, thanks to the rezoning of the Hill property with 300 to 500 more homes coming into that south. I didn't point of order for you last time, and it's the same. We can disagree on this topic another time. Please don't take my time. What I have to say is that we are building in the southeast quadrant, the regulatory district, more homes with these regulations than previously. And what that will do is it will allow those people in the Stonehenge, in the other townhomes and apartments to move into a smaller home, smaller lot, energy efficient. We'll also see retirees. We might see housing in the infill and the commercial mixed use PUDs where we have students and young people coming in who are recruits to our businesses. And we can refurbish those areas. We can redevelop those empty parking lots and those empty storefronts to provide that housing that's desperately needed so that the students living on my street don't have to live in a single family home. They can live in an apartment. That's what we need to do to free up the single family homes for that missing middle. What I'd like to do, I would like to make sure that we address the TDRs. I would like to make sure there are lots of things, just little minor things, but the LDRs are a huge step as part of the solution. I hope to be part of that solution.
Do I get
Megan, yes, thank you. When someone calls for a point of order, it does not come out of your time. And so your time is restored.
Yeah, but
so,
I could have called point of order before. Sure. I think we
Well,
yeah.
Do so, because I want to hear your opposing point, but we also have to hear Chris's opposing point.
He gave
Chris,
it before.
what was your opposing point? Well, Megan was speaking.
This particular time, I think there's a gross misunderstanding of the zoning that's actually going to deliver housing types. Are you really going to see housing types under 500,000? Over 500 is not missing middle. You know, this is housing where somebody's first starting into home ownership. It's somebody who's downsizing. I agree with the concepts that Megan's talking about, but the reality is the zoning doesn't match that. Smaller footprint, multiple housing types.
Thank you, Chris. I've got to stop you there. That was his retort to yours.
Yeah.
Do you want to respond to that? Yeah. As briefly, please.
I think we agree that over $500,000 is not affordable for the missing middle. So I don't quite understand his point of order. I didn't say opposite that. I think what we need to do is to create different types of housing, including apartments, condos, duplexes, multiplexes, so that the students, the young recruits, retirees can move out of their single family homes, and we can liberate and reduce the pressure for that missing middle.
Those proposed LDR or the
thank you.
LDRs implemented won't deliver that. And the reliance on one-time funds and nonprofits is not going to deliver that. You can't give home ownership opportunities for somebody to stop renting, and there's nothing wrong with renting. Actually, I think we need to expand our rental ownership as well as home ownership opportunities. But as long as people aren't able to move up into that middle income housing, that depletes our rental vacancy. That impacts everybody.
Chris, thank you.
Point of order then.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I want him to tell us exactly what is wrong with these regulations that won't allow us to develop more housing without going on the wetlands. Tell us, if you are truly for the conservation PUDs and the buffers of the wetlands, how do you intend to increase the numbers of homes that these current LDRs are providing?
Okay, Chris, I'm not going to allow you to answer that now. We still have to hear from Tim Barrett and then Linda Bailey on the same question. And at the end, you both have 3 minutes for summing up and time to make some of these points. So perhaps you want to return to that later. I can see this would take a long time to resolve this. Thank you. So Tim Barrett, you're on now.
Hi. So I really appreciate the work that the Planning Commission did over 3 years during interim zoning, and the fact that they pushed out a new set of regulations and they voted 7-0 on that. For people who are listening, if they didn't know, they voted 7-0. Now, there was some angst about that, and there was a lot of discussion and arguing. There were lots of public hearings about it, but when they were done, they voted 7-0 to send those new draft regulations to the City Council, which we voted on last Monday, and we passed them 3-2. What I think is important about those regulations is Article 12, and you may have heard about Article 12 in the media and in the other paper over the last year probably. The important thing that Article 12 does is it seeks to preserve more of our habitat blocks, our forest blocks. It increases the buffer to 100 feet on our wetlands. It designates several types of hazards and makes them unbuildable because they shouldn't be built on. And it really is, I think, a stake in the ground that the city has put there as its first step in trying to mitigate the future challenges that we have with climate change. And you can't argue that we're going to see greater rainfall in the future, greater heat in the summer, and everybody knows that we get our drinking water from Lake Champlain. So it's sort of counterintuitive that if we create more impervious surfaces, especially in the southeast quadrant where we have a lot of wetlands and a lot of natural filtration already going on, and we start creating a lot of impervious surface, then we're going to have to treat that water before we send it into one of our 4 impaired waterways, which we're trying to repair, before it goes into the lake, right? And we already have a problem with the lake with cyanobacteria blooms when it's hot. So we need to take actions, and these regulations take that action, but they don't completely eliminate development. They just extend the amount of land that needs to be protected. And I think it's a very common sense, science-based action that is going to help to mitigate the problems created by climate change. It's going to allow us to adapt to it, and it's going to create resilience. We need to be able to have those areas that are more natural than they would be if we just allowed a developer to go in and clear cut and create carpet housing. When you look at Chittenden County and you look at Shelburne Pond, remember that all of the land around Shelburne Pond is almost 100% conserved because that's a very fragile, beautiful area. As you travel north, you follow habitat movements that go all the way through the Vermont National Golf Course and all the way up to the interstate alongside the Hill Farm property. There is lots of evidence of all of this movement of lots of different wild animals. And so now I have to stop, and I'll just leave it at that. I love Article 12. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. The last candidate on this question is Linda Bailey.
Hi. This is a very complicated question, and it's not one that I think that I can answer for you in one 3-minute go. In my view, the LDRs that have just been passed are overly complex. They need to be properly vetted for what their unintended consequences will be. One that's a little different is I've been sitting in on various committee meetings as I had time over the last few weeks. One that I sat in recently was the Parks and Rec committee meeting. In that, they were busy drafting a letter to make it known that the amenities that the LDRs require any new building to have, which is outdoor spaces for people of various types, that the Parks and Rec does not have the staff or the funds to take over taking care of those. And apparently they were worried that that's part of what the LDRs were going to result in. We really need some more vetting of the unexpected consequences from these of all types. There are some things in there that I find a little difficult to swallow, like the areas, the wetlands, whatever, that are being preserved forever and ever. There's no way to reevaluate it in 2 or 3 decades to see what has changed in that area. As someone who has lived in rural areas, I know that even just from one year to the next, the outlines and the usage by water of a wetland can change drastically. So we need to be able to look at our land periodically and see if we need to adjust where we have boundaries on protection areas and stuff. Believe it or not, I do agree with some of what the LDRs do. I don't think we should cut down all of our trees. I don't think we should fill in our wetland areas. And I admit I do like the idea of having outdoor space near tightly packed homes that can be used by the residents, but it needs to be taken care of, not on the city's dime. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. That was obviously a very difficult question. Before we turn to the fourth one on the mask mandate, I'm going to ask Brooks and McKenna if you guys have given cards to people in the audience if they want to write some questions. Better give them a pen too so they can write on it. And then the two of you should have, or the three of you should come up with that list of questions that you guys will ask based on what you've been seeing. Have you been getting a lot of input from in the chat room? Yes, good. Okay, well, we'll keep busy until 9:30 then. Good, thank you. Okay, the fourth and last question is this. The city just adopted a mask mandate. Do you approve or disapprove of this mandate? Please explain. And this one starts with Tim Barrett and then goes to Linda Bailey.
Thank you, Vince. In the last mask mandate resolution, I voted nay. I voted against it because it allowed an opt-out for businesses, and I knew it was going to pass anyway. I just wanted to express my relative displeasure that we would stop a mandate where Williston and Burlington had not terminated theirs yet. I know everybody is tired of the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of having to wear a mask when I do, but I care about the citizens of South Burlington. I care about the people that shop, that don't live here, but they shop here. I don't want anybody going into a business and getting infected by the Omicron variant. And the easiest way to do that is for people to mask up appropriately with the right type of mask, in an environment when they're indoors and when they're not able to socially distance themselves from other people. The type of caring that goes on for the people in the city. In 2018, I asked city management to review with the city council in open session the details of their employee assistance plan, so that we could be assured that there was a 1-800 number that every employee in the city knew about that they could use if they needed it. Because I think it's very important that people have that ability to reach out. So, that's why I voted nay and wanted people to keep masking up. I know we're coming to the point where the numbers are falling rapidly, and I think that the school districts are getting ready to change their mandates as well. And I would love to see that everything goes back to normal. That's the only reason why I voted nay. But I just want to say that since January 1st, there have been over 100 deaths in Vermont, 100 extra deaths because of the Omicron. It's so infectious that it infects many more people. And then you have a higher percentage of possible people that could be hospitalized and or die. So that was my only concern, is I just don't want people to infect other people inside the stores. But I can see the numbers are falling, and I think the store owners, they have the option to opt out, and they're taking that appropriately and making the decision for themselves. I will just ask everybody that's here and that's watching tonight, please, if you're uncomfortable in a business, wear a mask wherever you want to when you're in a public setting where you can't socially distance. I think it's important that you take care of yourself first. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tim. Linda Bailey, please.
This is both a easier and a more difficult question than the last one. I agree with what the city council did with continuing the mask mandate. I'm okay with it. They gave businesses a choice of whether the business demanded to have masks or not. I think that in South Burlington, we have a very high level of care about our community members and our fellow citizens. And when I go in the store, virtually everyone is masked. I do agree that Omicron variant seems to be going away. Our numbers are dropping pretty soon. Hopefully, we won't, any of us need to wear masks all the time. But for now, I think people are, and that they take responsibility.
Good. Thank you, Linda. Chris Trombly first, and then Megan Emery.
I just think back to my kids and how diligent they've been wearing masks at school. They understand the importance. It's second nature to them. And, they set an example for me. We've seen cases fall and spike over the past few years. We could take them off and we got to put them back on. And, at the end of the day, we've had great success with vaccines lowering the death rate. I'm vaccinated and boosted. So is my family. These are personal decisions each of us have to make. But, I'm more concerned about protecting somebody who's more vulnerable. And that's a personal responsibility as well. A lot of us have stress and anxiety about folks at home. If they caught COVID, what would happen? So it's empathy of how we impact others as well. Continue to look to the state for guidance on current conditions. Ask residents for their feedback, listen to diverse opinions, and make the best informed decision we can with the information we have available at the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Megan Emery, please.
I appreciate this question. As you can see, thank you for the question. As you can see, we have a variety of policy decisions to make in the city, and this is one that is particularly sensitive because it has to do with people who are suffering in every aspect. We have a public health crisis and we have a mental health crisis at the same time. I did not vote on December 6th meeting to impose the mask mandate because the numbers were not high enough. The numbers had remained low in South Burlington, and I was watching the numbers. When the public authorities were recommending mask wearing, if numbers reached a certain point, I saw that in January that was occurring. We saw the beds in the ICU filling and in our hospitals. And so I did agree on January 10th to vote for that mask mandate, knowing full well that we can't enforce it. And that is why this is such a difficult decision. I saw it as a reminder to people, we're not out of this yet. And let's just hang in there a little bit longer until these numbers come down. The numbers are now coming down. And I believe that we should treat this as an endemic, as our scientists and medical doctors are telling us that we are coming out of a pandemic and going into an endemic situation here, which means that we have to, again, listen to our public health authorities and specialists and take those private decisions in our families. I too am vaccinated, boosted, whole family is. I do wear a mask because I'm required to at my university where I work. I feel that it makes the students feel comfortable. They also are required to be vaccinated and wear masks, and it makes a more comfortable setting for us to be able to have discussions in spite of having this thing over our faces. I think that will change. with time, and I think we'll all be grateful for it. What's great about the mask is that now we know which ones to wear. It took us a while to figure that out and to have enough in stock to be able to purchase them. And now we can sit next to each other. So step by step, we're getting there. So I think that it's a very difficult decision because it's not enforceable. And so I think that as we turn the corner here and the numbers go down, we will go back to the way it was back in November and December, early December, where we will make our personal choices. We all know what we're comfortable with. And for those who wish to wear a mask, I will be among you until I feel comfortable, and everyone should respect that.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Megan. Now it's time for that part of the program for the audience questions. And so, Jared, are you prepared with a bunch of questions? Brooks and McKenna, you've got your questions? Okay. Jared, press the button on yours and ask the first question. After you ask it, I'll call on people in the order that we've decided on. Of course, Ava will keep track of the time. We've reduced these to 2 minutes, so it's a little briefer. Jared, go ahead.
All right, first question. South Burlington is discussing removing qualified immunity for police. What is your stance on this, and how do you think this would affect the city?
Okay, according to the agreed upon order, this starts with Linda Bailey and then Tim Barrett.
Okay. I have to tell you that I don't have a clear stance on this. I need to get more information, find out just what does qualified immunity cover and what doesn't it. I don't think that a policeman who acts egregiously should get away with that without discipline or being held accountable by the public. But at the same time, a policeman who is honestly doing his job shouldn't be called out because he was honestly doing his job. So this is one I'm going to have to study on more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Tim Barrett.
Coming. Can you hear me? No, you can see me now. Yeah.
Yes.
This is an interesting question. The council has not discussed this at all. It hasn't come to that to us yet. I know that other communities are having this discussion and other major cities are too. I think it's a very it can be a very controversial subject, but I think it has some important points to make, and we're going to have to wait and see where it goes. I think it's black and white and gray area in between. I don't have a stand right now. I think what's more important right now in terms of policing is making sure that we hold the police accountable for the proper training when it comes to implicit bias. And that's something that, I've asked our police chiefs to do since 2016, is to come in and report to City Council about the training that goes on with the police department so that we understand that they're getting the right training and they're getting it regularly as per needed, so that everybody is treated fairly. That's the real crux of it, is making sure that everybody gets fairly treated by the department. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Megan Emery, and then Chris Trombly.
Yeah, just like I follow the numbers with regard to the COVID contagion rate in our city, I follow the numbers with regard to police mistakes and misactions, and our police force has an excellent record. I think that a statewide limited immunity is not the way to go. I think that our chief of police and our former chief of police, that they have been very sensitive to bringing the victim as the primary concern in policing. And two, this implicit bias training that Tim referred to, that is something that our police officers do. In fact, when back in 2020, when George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis, my daughter came home and asked me, I look at our school resource officer and I wonder, could she do that? And I called the chief, and that school resource officer came to our house, and she told my daughter about her training. She told my daughter about what questions go through her mind when she is doing her job. And they had an hour conversation. Now, clearly, my daughter is not identifiable as the most susceptible member of the public, yet she is a young woman. And I have to say, coming out of that conversation, I felt that our police officers are just outstanding in the state. And I think that we have to pay attention to the fact that it's very difficult to recruit police officers. And if we want to make sure that we have public safety officers in our community, and especially when we have the force that we have with this excellence, I'm not sure that the limited immunity would help us make progress.
Okay, thank you very much. Chris Trombly.
We should have that conversation. I mean, it's as we grow as a community, we become aware of course we should have those challenges or those discussions. And, as a community becomes aware of how do we be a better community and how do we police our community? Those are okay conversations to have, and sometimes they're uncomfortable. Those are the conversations that we should continue to have. We've always had great success working with the police department. The recent break-ins around town, procedures with mental health de-escalation, adoption of uniform cameras. But as we grow as a community, it's okay to have those hard conversations and review where we're at and see what our needs are. That's a healthy review or a process. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Question number 2, Jared. Okay, Connor has it. Brooks has it.
So the second question is, do you support the 4 for 4 proposal sponsored by the South Burlington Land Trust? And to qualify that, do you believe in using tax dollars to preserve open space?
Okay, this one starts with Megan Emery and then Chris Trombly.
Yeah. At this point, I don't. I know that our budget is tight, and I am very sensitive to the taxpayers' ability to pay. At the same time, I believe that if we wish to invest in our natural infrastructure, we should do that as a city. People say that the people in the Southeast Quadrant are some elite group. Well, in fact, there are many old families there who are just piecing coins together in order to pay their property taxes. And we should not simply say your land is no longer worth what you thought it was. If we wish to make sure that that land is able to mitigate stormwater, then we need to see that as a value to our community, and we need to make good on that value. And that means dollars. That means purchasing that land and keeping that landowner whole. So those are conversations, again, that will be incrementally had. This is not necessary, I think, to do it all in one fell swoop. And we'll have those conversations going forward.
Thank you. Chris Trombly, and then we'll do Linda Bailey and Tim Barrett.
The penny for the open space fund this year, as a result of the reappraisal, saw a significant increase in funding. Support that staying there. That should be transparent to the taxpayer, understanding that that was not revenue neutral, but I think you could draw a reasonable conclusion that both the open space and the bike path saw an increase as a result of the grand list. We do need a balance of investment at a time where the taxpayers can support it for other housing initiatives, possibly a housing trust fund. But we got to find the right time to do that. We see Winooski's doing it, Burlington's doing it. How can we look at a 1 cent tax for a housing trust fund to build some of those subsidized housing? The greatest need where the money is so limited and it disappears so fast, or maybe that funds could be used for weatherization of existing home and protecting existing landowners. So conversations we should have. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda Bailey is next.
Definitely a subject worthy of conversation. There are a lot of needs in this city. We know that some of our grade schools are getting very full. There is the penny for paths, which, as Chris mentioned, increased this year because it's not a fixed amount. It goes against the value of a home. This 4 cents on your tax rate for 4 years to buy up property. This comes into some of the problems with the LDRs, that they've made people's property no longer developable in the same amount as it was, as they were planning on. One of the places that makes a reason that we need to look at the LDRs, evaluate and vet them, and then we can see if a proposal like that is needed to make people whole. But first, we've got to check the LDRs and see what they're actually going to do.
Good, thank you. Question number 3. Who's going to read that? Jared, back to you or Brooks?
Wait, what about me?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You did this to me in 2016.
I'm so sorry. Please go ahead.
All right. So everybody's saying the same thing, that, you know, the reassessment of the city generated an extra $90,000 for both the penny for path and penny for open spaces. That's a 32% increase. That really wasn't expected. I was the person that pointed out that we had been saying revenue neutral, and it turns out they weren't really. I don't support the 4 pennies. I mean, it's a great idea, but as you know, the pandemic ruined the commercial evaluations in the city and dumped all of that tax burden back onto residential. Then you have all these people from out of state pouring in with cash coming out of their pockets, buying homes unseen by iPhones, you know, walkthroughs. So the problem is that it just, I think it would create more of a tax burden. And I think we have to evaluate very carefully where we want to put money. We've already spent $606,000 initially in the southeast quadrant, you know, for the Eau Claire property. Then we put another $300,000 there to match with some USDA grant money to further conserve that land. You know, if we didn't have this open space plan, we wouldn't have been able to purchase the Hubbard Park, right, which is a beautiful gem that we're still waiting to see how that's going to get formed into a public space. Right now, it's very natural, and Common Roots has some farm property. So, you know, we're keeping in mind, but I think we got to be really sensitive to tax increases right now.
Good, thank you very much. The third question from the audience, Jared, do you have it? And the responders will be in this order: Trombly, then Emery, Barrett, who we won't forget, and Bailey.
So the third question is, balancing the funding for different goals is an important part of the City Council. Based on this factor, which would each candidate put first? 1, going forward on the new indoor recreation center, or 2, supporting the school board and addressing the school's capital needs? Please give reasons for your choice.
Okay. Could everyone hear it?
Here, repeat it.
Okay. Can't hear it there?
Sorry, I'll repeat that. So,
yeah. If you don't mind pulling your mask off, it'll be easier. Just for 1 minute.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, balancing the funding for different goals is an important part of City Council. Based on this factor, which would each candidate put first? 1, going forward on a new indoor recreation center, or 2, supporting the school board and addressing the school's capital needs? Please give reasons for your choice.
Okay, Chris Trombly, we start with you, and then Megan Emery.
So question is rec center or school improvement? Boy, that's a, you know, the solution is that we need to see improved communication between our school and the city for capital planning long-term and what those needs are. As the school board was discussing earlier, they want to reassess what those needs are, and they may have capital improvements. And they're going to take a look at what those requirements are. We shouldn't put the voter in a position where they're choosing a great indoor rec park at the expense of the schools. You know, so that's something where we need to have better communication. But further with the rec center, you know, we have to be mindful of who's able to access these great sources that we're investing all this money into. putting it out beyond public transportation, where it's walkable, bikeable, bus activity. We should talk about where that indoor rec center goes so that all residents can access that without having to get in the car to drive there. But better coordination between the school to talk about long-term investment plans.
Okay, thank you. Next is Megan Emery.
Well, clearly the school's infrastructure needs need to be discussed seriously first. The concern I hope will be raised by the new makeup of the school board, however, is that expressed by the voters in 2020, which was we are not willing to build a new middle school and a high school for $210 million and see our property taxes rise roughly by 30% for some of us. And that's where we talk about taxing capacity. Now, I understand I'm a teacher, and so I see this from a perspective where as long as you have a wonderful teacher and a student who wants to learn, you're going to do well no matter where you are. So that said, we clearly need to make sure that these are safe areas where students are learning, that there is nothing in the air or in the environment that would cause them harm. But with regard to being cramped, I would see much more refurbishing and adding on to the high school, for instance, adding on a new gymnasium, adding on a new auditorium, which would free those areas in order to build a new lunchroom, in order to have open classrooms such as they had envisioned in their 2020 plan. With regard to the elementary schools, I need to know more. Could there be another elementary school? We do not have state and federal funds to use in order to build a new elementary school. My elementary school was a 2-story. I raised that with the superintendent. He said that's not ideal for an elementary school. I'd like to know why, because it would be much more affordable. So those are discussions we need to have first before putting before the voters a recreation center, but we cannot wait 5-10 years. We had the revisioning years ago and we still haven't seen a plan yet. And so we need to be realistic.
Thank you. Tim Barrett, you're next.
Yeah, this is a great question, and it's true for any city that has education versus municipal, and what burdens should go where, and when should you bond and then raise the tax for a particular project. One thing that's nice is that I think the city council and the school board work really well together, and that we get along very well. We demonstrated that with the new city hall, because in order to have the parking lots, we had to do a little land swap with them. It was a little tense for a while, but we worked it out. But one of the nice things is that the result was that they were able to satisfy their stormwater 3-acre rule because of the under parking lot infiltration that was built and designed by the city hall project. So the rec center has been planned for a long time. We have a design for it. We have our own land that we don't have to buy, unlike the city hall that was quite expensive, right? We've got the land, we own it up at Veterans Memorial Park. I think it's something that we need to push forward and then eventually bring to the voters to see how they feel about it. I don't know what the school's plans are, and I'm sensitive to them, and I'm hoping that the state will be able to create and fund a construction fund that is applicable to districts that need, because I know that there are a lot of schools that need either repair or some sort of enhancement. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens there. Of course, there should be balance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Linda Bailey.
I think this comes down, if I were one of my kids came to me with a thing they needed and a thing they wanted, that's what this is. A thing we need, which is to continue having great schools here, versus a thing we want, which is a new rec center. We need to look at it carefully. What are the true needs of the schools? Do they just need temporary new space? Because then the population of children is shrinking. We all hear about families are getting smaller and smaller these days. A rec center would be lovely to have, but We need to make sure it's at a place that is accessible for everybody in the city. Veterans Memorial Park is harder to bike to for a lot of the people in the city or get to on public transportation. It would totally depend on what the needs are when it comes around. I definitely lean toward we need to support our schools. That's our next generation. That's our future. Depends on balance. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Linda. Now we have a fourth question, presumably from the audience. Okay, go ahead, Brooks.
So the city council members come from many areas of South Burlington. However, in the past, there have been concerns that the council heavily represents only certain areas of the city. How would each candidate assure that all neighborhoods of all income levels are equally considered in policy proposal?
Sure.
Okay.
I start, right, Vince?
That's correct.
Yeah, Burlington's got a ward system, and we just have an at-large system, and it's 5 counselors. And right now, Matt Cota and I and Tom Chittenden could all pretty much spit on each other here in the Southeast Quadrant. And Linda, I think, lives over in the Chamberlain area along with Megan. So the only way we could do that is to have a really serious discussion about changing our charter. If we changed our charter and we went to wards, then you would have to elect an individual from each ward. And so you would get a better dispersion of representation from the different areas. It's kind of like, in Front Porch Forum, they have all those different fora, right? We've got one for Southwest and Southeast Quadrant and Queen City Park. That kind of concept, it goes a long way in terms of representation. But I want you to think about Burlington. They have like 13 city councilors. Their meetings go till 2 o'clock in the morning. So I just want to warn people that before they go down that road, how long do you want to have to hang on, especially for the media to have to watch and record and be able to write about meetings. But it's a great idea. We should talk about it. And we've had some minor discussion in the past. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. Linda Bailey.
The ward system could be very interesting here. I'd want to see our sections divided up a bit more than the obvious ways. But whether we decide to do something like that or not, that would be down in the future quite a ways. One of my concerns running for city council is that all set areas of the city be represented. That's why I want to make sure that the city council reaches out more often to the people that are maybe less involved in city government. Keeping regular postings on Front Porch Forum and things like that would be great. Making sure more people know about the really good city newsletter that's put out on email. I didn't discover it until I'd been here for several years. I think a lot of the worries about all of the different areas of the city being equally treated just needs some attention, that we need to pay attention to all of the city. And perhaps now that the interim zoning and such are over with, there will be more bandwidth and it will happen. If I'm on city council, I will be working to make it happen.
Thank you very much. Chris Trombly and then Megan Emery.
It's something where we need a balance of representation, both for citywide and local neighborhoods. It's weird calling your neighborhood the Southeast Quadrant. It doesn't feel like a neighborhood. So there's some opportunity where we can
Point of order.
Talk about.
Where do I hear that from?
That was from Tim, but I'm not serious. But keep going.
Oh, there you are. Oh, okay.
I'm not talking about the.
You're not serious, Tim? Okay.
Well, you said
maybe Tim misunderstood.
It feels very much like it's a neighborhood, but keep going.
No, the land and the people are the neighborhood, but the name Southeast Quadrant is just the odd neighborhood name. So thank you for the clarification there. But we need representation. We have very different needs in different parts of the city. For example, in the airport neighborhood, there's expressed interest that they want to see some of those open space dollars and the pennies for PAS. They feel underinvested in that area, and they'd like to see a more proportional investment so that when they're riding their bike from home to work, they feel safe using alternative transportation needs. So, it's worthwhile having representation for a certain area or a neighborhood. as well as at large. That's worth talking about.
Okay, thank you. Megan Emery, please.
Yeah, thank you. Well, as I said before, and as was said, I live in the Chamberlain neighborhood. It definitely feels like a neighborhood. And I will say that when I first ran in 2008, very little volunteer action going on, very little volunteer involvement in the city, including in our committees. That has grown. And how I got involved in city government is through the Charter Review Committee. And what I did was I put into, along with another woman, we both actively advocated the inclusion of neighborhood forums in our city government. So if there was a neighborhood issue, the neighborhood could gather and could actually petition the city council in order to have a series of meetings. And that has been activated. We used to meet in the schools. The situation at the schools is that the audio is not as good at the schools. And people could not hear us when they were attending. Nevertheless, that would be ideal to have meetings throughout the city. That was something that was in our city charter as well as allowing campaign signs outside of private lawns, just to get that civic spirit going. What I would say is the current council right now has a diversity of viewpoints. There might be 3 councilors, 4 councilors that live in the southeast quadrant, although separated by a massive land. But we have diversity of views, which is important. We also have a diversity of skill sets. And I think that we're a very strong council and we're served well. The public is served well by that. And what I would like to say is our planning commission, which is the most important body. We get to approve what the planning commission actually does the hard work on producing. The planning commission have people from every part of the city. Eastwoods, we have also all over the city, Spear Street. We have every part of the city is represented. I can't think with less than 5 seconds. So I'm gonna just leave it at that. Thanks very much.
Okay, very good. We would have just enough time, sticking to our schedule, to have one more question from the audience. And then all candidates have 3 minutes to sum up in some way. Do you have one more, or is it time, or we don't need you to plug something in if you don't have a good question, is there?
Yes, we have 2 questions.
Oh, better flip a coin. I'm sure they're very good. Yeah.
Your final question is, do you believe there should be term limits for city council members?
That's a short question. We're going back to the order of question number 1. And so that's Bailey, then Barrett, Emery, then Trombly.
Yes, that's my answer to that. Yes, term limits would be good. It, I think, will help to get a turnover of people with different views to come in, not with things that they've learned for so long that they have preconceived notions of what would be best for the city. New people, new voices, new faces.
Okay, thank you. Tim Barrett.
Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious why Linda chose to say that, because she's challenging me. So I appreciate that response. You know, it's hard to get people sometimes to volunteer for positions in cities, and sometimes I've heard of situations where in some of the rural areas, to get back at somebody you don't like, you know, when there's nobody running for something, you just write in their name and that one vote gives them the position of being a sextant, you know, or whatever, and you blindside them like that. We haven't ever had that discussion. I don't know if that's an issue. I think it's up to the voters to decide whether or not a candidate is worthy of their vote, and whether they've worked hard, and whether that candidate believes strongly in the things that make them run in the first place, and that they follow through, that they're trustworthy, that they communicate with people, and that they care about the city, and they care about the people that work for the city and that live in the city. So I would leave it up to the voters at this point. Thanks.
Thank you. Next we have, is it Emery and then Trump? No, yes, it's Emery and then Trombly.
Yeah, I would say yes for senators in particular. I'm talking about U.S. senators, But for city councilors, I would say no. We just learned today of the retirement of our Secretary of State, Jim Condos, who served for 18 years on our city council, a consummate public servant. And some of us are that, and this is not a full-time job. I have a full-time job, actually two. I'm a mom and I work as a professor at the university. So we rely on our staff. We rely on all of our volunteer committees and commissions and boards in order to be the most informed when we make those decisions. And like I said, with regard to these land development regulations, we rely on that planning commission. They did the hard work. We get to read their hard work and say, this makes sense. I think that something else that is important for this election, we are in a period of momentum. These land development regulations are a huge step forward. You've got an experienced council. You have an injection of a new counselor who's still on a learning curve, and that is something to consider. We have laid out the community vision in various steps, prioritizing what comes next. And in fact, getting to Linda's point, we want to include people of all backgrounds. And many of these people do not have the time or the resources or means to run for office, but we need to reach out to them and make sure that they are part of our meetings. And we need to make sure that we ask them how that can happen so that the people who are least served, and I'm talking about new Americans, I'm talking about people who are working 2 full-time jobs simply to have enough food on their table. That's what we need to do. And that takes experience, and that takes, I think, what this council's got.
Okay, thank you. Chris Trombly ends this question.
Yeah, this is the question I'll choose to set aside. I was reflecting during the debate when questions were coming in. When we're going to talk about equity, impact, of our decisions in our neighborhood. School board spent almost the entire forum talking about that, and we didn't touch on it once here. There's an opportunity where we can take a step forward as a council to show leadership on this topic and implement that into our new master plan and think about the quality of life standards when we talk about where does housing go. When we have discussions about, maybe only the affordable housing goes on Shelburne Road, right along, those busy, noisy routes.
Point of order, who said that?
It's being discussed right now.
By whom?
In point of order, what are you answering? What question are you answering?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Tim. I don't know what questions are being asked at me. So
let's clarify it. Megan, what was the point of order over? What was your question for Chris? And then
Seemed to be quoting somebody that affordable housing should only be on Shelburne Road.
Okay. Chris, do you have a response to that?
Oh, yeah, I do. The PAC that supports both candidates discussed appropriately placed affordable housing. I'd like a response from both Councilor Emery and Councilor Barrett to respond whether they support dark money PACs that make it harder for those underserved community folks to run for office. It's a large financial barrier, and it's a disservice to some of our residents because it limits participation in the civic discourse. And the fact that we didn't spend any time on it, talking about it during this debate, is also a disservice. I got to get my piece out there. I'm not specifically calling out Councilor Emmer, Councilor Barrett, but I'd like to hear their response to that statement by the PAC that supports them.
That's a different question than we're dealing with.
It's a fair question. I'm happy to answer.
What we should probably do is, since Chris Trombly's question just ended all of the formal questions, we now all you each have 3 minutes to summarize any points that you wanted to make. And what we can do with this is extend it to 4 minutes, if that's okay, to have time to take that up. And so we can deal with it in that organized way. And I'm afraid, by luck of the draw, the order of final summaries goes to Linda Bailey, then Tim Barrett, then Megan Emery, then to Chris Trombly. And that'll bring us right to the final hour. So this is a time when the candidates knew they would have 3 minutes to sum up or to return to any points, 4 minutes, I said, return to any points they wanted to raise.
I'm going to stick with my sum up that I had ready for myself. I'll let the others get into heated debate right here and now. First off, I want to thank all of you who came and who are watching online and the students who have put this together. This is so appreciated. It's very important for local government to have these kind of forums, and I'm glad our students have stepped up. I want you to vote for me because I will be here for you, all of the residents in the city. I'll be seeing everything with fresh eyes, as well as listening for the advice that comes from all of the residents in South Burlington. I want you to vote for me because I'll be a positive and cooperative city councilor. I am a person of integrity and transparency, and I'll be listening for your feedback. As we smooth out the new land development regulations and make other major decisions about the future of our community, South Burlington needs a balanced voice open to all solutions, who believes the careful use of the city's resources is the way forward for our city. I'll work to keep South Burlington solvent now and into the future. Did I mention I'm retired? Fixed income, I'll be watching the budget. I'll work for a balanced community that has a cross-section of people from all walks of life. And I'll stand in opposition to special interest groups that do not represent the majority of our city. Climate change is the single largest challenge that we and all of humanity are facing right now. We cannot think that South Burlington exists in a bubble. What we do affects others. What they do affects us. We need to think in the big terms. We need to continue modernizing our buildings and our infrastructure. We need to be open to centralizing middle-class Vermonters near their jobs, near the shopping centers, near the entertainment, rather than forcing them into the kinds of long commutes that are Vermont's single greatest source of CO2 greenhouse gas emissions. We need to have a city council that reaches out and engages the community. So vote for South Burlington's future that's sustainable and welcoming. Vote Linda Bailey for City Council March 1st. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Tim, it's your 4 minutes.
Sure. I just want to start off by saying that I thank the Planning Commission for all the hard work they did to pass the new LDRs, which are now our new regulations. And so as a very important point I want to make for this election in this campaign is that really the LDR changes are not really relevant anymore. The point is moot. And I don't see why we're having any more discussion about the LDRs that were just passed by City Council, because now they are the regulations. I understand that we need to have a planning commission, and they are working on some PUD changes so we can have a generic PUD to satisfy some future work that could happen on Shelburne Road for various projects. And those are things that they're going to work on, and they're doing it right now. But for the campaign that's remaining for the next 2 weeks, I really don't see why we're talking about the LDRs at all. You know, those changes are going to have an enormous impact on trying to help protect the city from climate change. And I think we should just put that in the past and move forward with other discussions about the things that are really important. I would like to thank the voters for having chosen me to be their city councilor for the last 6 years. And I'm looking forward to the next 3 years if you elect me. I think the city has a lot of challenges ahead, and I want to be part of that decision-making process, as I have been for the last 6 years, as I was for 4.5 years on the Development Review Board as well. You know, I am a moderate candidate that can see both sides of an argument. You know, I love to argue. If you've been to previous city council meetings, if there's an issue that I feel strongly about, I'm glad to argue with people about it on both sides. I mean, you know, I was in favor of the LDRs, but I was also in favor of Exit 12B, which I think has enormous economic potential to tie together two major arteries and relieve congestion at some of the other exits on Interstate 89. But those are things that are going to happen way out, like, you know, 15, 20, 25 years, and the CCRPC is working on that. But I voted for 12B, but I had to go back and add back in 13. So I just want people to understand is that, I am not an anti-business and pro, conservation only candidate. I'm in the middle, and I see things from both sides, and I will discuss them. I want to keep in mind that we have to keep a control on costs in the city for tax purposes, but we need to also look at those long-term investments that will pay off for us in years to come. The quality of life in South Burlington means good homes, good housing, right? Dependable and superlative public safety, fire, ambulance, and police, right? We need to have great schools, an active civic engagement with our population, a fabulous new library in the senior center, and wonderful recreation paths that travel throughout the city and the Southeast Quadrant and other areas as well, right? So that people can get out and bike and walk and run and be out in open spaces and experience our natural wonders, right? And we need to have this future development that will help us grow in smarter ways, which is what I think the LDRs will do. I hope you'll join me and you will vote for me on March 1st. And please vote for Tim Barrett. I think it's a vote for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah.
Megan Emery, and then Chris Trombly ends it.
Yeah, I want to thank you students, thank you Vince, thank you to the city technician there, our city manager Jesse Baker. The city is an incredibly caring and generous community. I feel so lucky to live here, and I have only gained more appreciation for the city every year I've lived here, with the excellent schools, with the volunteers who are just phenomenally generous with their expertise and their time. We are well served by our volunteers. We are forward looking, and we strive to really be a community. We are served by the best municipal team in the state. They're the lean team, our planning commission, DRB, and all our committees who truly care about the future of South Burlington. It's been a true honor to serve the people of South Burlington for the past 12 years. I wish there wasn't a PAC. I wish that one of the council members who currently serves did not spend $30,000 over 2 years in order to get on the council. I see both of those things as symptoms of a big problem, and I see that as something that is making it less accessible to many people to run for council. I let Vince know that I probably wouldn't have run had I seen that people were spending $20,000 to run for city council. When I first ran, I spent maybe $100 making photocopies at Staples and standing outside of the dump, landfill, sorry, nicer name. I believe that my opponent pays lip service to conservation. I want to know where all these extra homes that he wants to build will go. I believe that the city has a high standard of living and quality living everywhere in the city, including in the Chamberlain neighborhood. We have, in fact, I think the most acres of open space in the Chamberlain neighborhood. And we have biking trails that are in the process of being developed. I believe that I've been an incremental agent of change for the Chamberlain neighborhood, putting it on the map of the city. And I just have to come back to my central core values. I have long been a strong advocate for affordable housing. It's key to our economic development. I have from the very beginning. I'm an advocate for home ownership. I advocated the expansion of inclusionary zoning. I want it to be more inclusive than 1 per 10. And I supported the creation of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. I have also supported the Penny for Paths initiative, the expansion of our network, the study of our natural areas through the Open Space IZ Committee in order to prioritize land parcels for conservation. These are the lungs. These are the areas where we will be able to mitigate the worst storms to come and save our homeowners from heartache and loss. I supported, in fact, I wrote the resolution to create the Climate Action Task Force. I'm an active proponent of equity, and I organized a forum this past summer on land use and equity. 2 Abenaki chiefs were in attendance, as was a college student, because they too are locked out of our city. and UVM professors who work on these issues. I also advanced the resolution for South Burlington's fair and impartial policing policy. Most important of all, I have been an independent voice on the council from the very beginning on behalf of residents' interests and quality of life for all. I am again seeking your vote. It would be an honor for me to serve you for another 2 years. I come with many years of experience, but yet humble, knowing that there is still more to learn. And in fact, I learn every day by working with the committees and all of the residents of the city. We're partners in this great city of ours. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Trombly, last one.
You know, I think at the end of the day, when you reach a point where you choose not to address a political action committee raising significant funds to move forward your campaign, maybe that's a sign for change.
Point of order.
Point of order recognized.
Yes.
What's your question for?
I don't think they can spend $20,000 according to the state law. The state law limits what they can spend. So I have
$20,000 come from?
Matt Cota spent $20,000 in 2020. I understand, but I understand that that's why this PAC has come together, because there are very strong interests with deep pockets in the city that would prefer not to have me be on this council. It would prefer that Tim be gone on this council. That would prefer that we build over our wetlands. That's something that Linda even said, that those wetlands don't necessarily stay. Well, that's why we have buffers, because they do change paths. That's why the buffers are there.
Chris, we return to you without any loss of time.
You know, I'm not running a $20,000 campaign. This is Chris Trombly running. I'm setting a standard that I don't have a PAC running. When I engage,
I don't have a PAC either. Point of order. I do not have a PAC running. I didn't ask for it. I have nothing to do with it. I answered the questions just like you did, Chris. And if you had been recognized, I would love to. I mean, you were trying also to receive their benefit. The thing I do see is at least they have an idea that they are trying and a value system. And you too sought their support. So I find this to be very disingenuous.
That's fair. I was very upfront with the board members of this political action committee. I asked to speak with them afterwards. Said, listen, you know, I'm not here to get your endorsement, but to continue a dialogue. We have shared values, and you know, it was not to my benefit to apply for this. You know, but it's important to have a dialogue after town meeting day. I was very transparent about my answers. As expected, they cut it out for portions and didn't highlight the whole thing. That's why I published it on my website. You know, you can reject the support. You can say, no, thank you, don't do this on my behalf. I get concerned when they post things like appropriate place for affordable housing. Like, what does that even mean? We need to be thoughtful about the kind of politics that we have. We see it failing us in cities around us like Burlington, and they talk about how it suppressed voices either for rerunning or for even running in the first place. It's such a financial barrier. South Burlington's 20,000 residents. It's not what it used to be, you know, but that doesn't mean that we have to resort to that type of politics. The fact that Councilor Barrett chose not to respond to anything of this is, you know, I'd like to understand his position on that. You know, you can set an example.
You want me to respond right now?
No, you can set an example, and you can be a role model.
Thank you,
when
Chris.
I watch this with my children later on, I'll know that I'll be able to say, you know, I fought back against this political action committee, and when they say things like places for affordable housing, appropriate places for affordable housing, I defended that position, unlike Councilor Barrett and unlike Councilor Emery.
Can I respond now?
Excuse me, point of order.
Tim was next. Let's hear what Tim has to say, and then we'll go to you, Megan, and then back to Chris. But we're going to have to end this shortly. So
yeah, I know. And I just want to make a quick point here, Chris, is that you know, a political action committee can have no coordination with a candidate whatsoever, and that's exactly what's going on here. I have no idea what that political action committee is doing. I have no communication with them. I'm not responsible for any of the content that they publish or any of their signs. I have no idea what they're doing, and that is their business, and it is something that they want to do. It's, you know, I can't stop them from doing it. I can not take donations myself for my own costs. And Chris, I'm not taking any donations from anybody myself, and I will end up spending my entire stipend, all right, for the year of 2021 being a city councilor to try and get reelected, you know, for another 3 years. You know, you don't receive a lot of remuneration for this position, and I understand that it's a financial hurdle, but I also understand that when some people are backed by other people, right, it can take over $30,000 and 2 tries to get on city council. So let's be careful about the pot calling the kettle black here, okay? And I just want to reiterate that, you know, I am a moderate candidate that looks at both sides, and if somebody wants to have a PAC for some reason, that's their business, all right? What they say is what they say. Your argument should be with them and definitely not with me.
You can't have it both ways, though.
Tim, thank you for your comment. Chris responded to that, and then Megan wants to say something, right?
Yeah.
Chris, do you want to respond directly to Tim?
No, you have a voice. You're a leader in the community. You can say, no, don't do that. I'm not good with that.
Okay.
You can stand up to that kind of discourse that's suppressing people from participating. Nobody likes popping onto Facebook and getting hit with attacks. You know, it's not good democracy. And as leaders, I'm just asking both incumbents to reconsider this position and consider speaking up against it.
All right. So,
Megan, I said you could go, but then I want Chris to summarize his points and we end.
thank you.
So keep it as brief as you can, please.
Well, Chris had a political past in Burlington, so he's very familiar with being, you know, open to public criticism. And I think that you need to have a thick skin to run for political office. It's just part of it. I've had to grow a thick skin over these years. You said that you were the only candidate fighting for affordable housing. That's what I did the point of order on. I am fighting for affordable housing, and not just on Shelburne Road, throughout the city. And that's why I want us to use those $1 million so that we can advance environmental justice, and we don't just have one home where there's one kid getting off the school bus and he's the one kid on the block that lives in the affordable housing unit that's built using the same funds that we want to use to build many more than one home. And why do I say that? It's because I lived in affordable housing as a child. And I know very well what it means to live with one's peers. The only time that I felt out of my environment was when I got a Pell Grant to go to a private university, Northwestern University, and I was introduced to a world that I had never, ever been in before.
Megan, thank you very much. Chris, now you really have to finish with your summary points.
Summary points, you know, just we can be leaders in our community regarding political action communities, equity, and making that a central point of the discussion. But we also have common sense priorities, you know, moving forward with climate change, you know, the lip service comment, and I don't understand where it comes from.
You haven't answered my question about where you're going to put all these extra homes. That somehow, you know, magically they're going to appear without being built on wetlands and
Chris, if that's part of your if an answer to that is part of your summary points, good. But otherwise, you don't have to answer her question. Just out of good order. I'm sorry.
Well, you know, it's a fair question. You know, where we build homes matters, and who we build them for matters, so that we can give opportunities to others. It's redevelopment of the U-Mall. It's infill development. It's more missing middle housing types that are not going to be realized under the new regulations.
How are you going to realize them?
I think
let's let Chris finish his comments, and you guys can discuss that separately.
Yeah, I think this is an opportunity where we as a community can talk about the benefits that zoning can have so that we can see the housing that's delivered that we need for the community, and not just let the market, our broken housing system continue as status quo.
Point of order.
Okay.
This is anything but status quo, these land development regulations, anything but status quo. I think that there is severe lack of understanding of what these land development regulations are providing our community and will into the future. The same number of homes on less land so that we can protect them from flooding. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. The same number of homes on less land so that we can protect them and our community from flooding.
Thank you, Megan, for that. It's our time is up. Plenty of time for you guys to discuss this on your own or in other forums. Thank you very much, all four of you, for your willingness to serve. We can see that it's very hard. It's a very tough job to do. And it's oftentimes thankless and sometimes anxiety provoking. And so I also want to thank our students for the excellent job they did, and for our city manager for being such a competent AV person, and for the remaining audience here, and for the audience at home. So let's give a round of applause to everyone who participated.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
thank you,
thank
Vince.
you.
Couldn't hear that.